Hello once again, and welcome everyone on behalf of myself and Dave to another fantastic Trotec Laser Live. We are one man down this week, I'm afraid. Unfortunately, Tim could not be with us, but that is okay. We will chug on regardless. Dave is more than enough of an expert to cover.
I got this. No worries.
Yeah. How are you, Dave?
I'm good. How are you doing today, Don?
Awesome. Very well. Thank you for asking.
Good.
A huge thank you to anybody who joins us. We ended up realizing we had a little bit of free time this week right before Dave takes off for his Thanksgiving holidays. Also, happy Thanksgiving to all of our viewers watching from the United States coming up next week. Wanted to try and sneak in a last-minute stream with him and get you guys as much Ruby knowledge. And I think because it's just Dave and I'm going to put him on the spot a little bit today and ask him just Trotec questions across the gamut. Yes. Surprise. Just to try. And so anything is on the table, you guys, today. We will try and keep it Ruby-centric as much as we can. But given that Tim is not here to share the load with Dave, I figured this would be a good week to maybe kind of broaden things out a little bit and just benefit from his knowledge. And also, it's the last Friday before he goes away on vacation for a matter of days. So I feel like this is a good time where you've caught him and he's probably relaxed. He's in his element. He is ready to answer your questions. I mean, he's always ready to answer questions. But,
for sure.
So kicking things off with some Ruby stuff, if that's all right with you, I will launch right into it. A huge thank you to anybody who joins us in the chat, by the way. Obviously, either if you're watching now or in the future, thank you so much for joining us. We're happy to have you. If you are live in the chat, as we do every time, you're free to ask questions and interrupt us at any time. And we'll be very, very happy to throw those in there throughout the stream. Dave, I wanted to get your feedback on, we had kind of, at least from my perspective, a bit of a surprise drop of the new version of Ruby last week. It came to us while we were at a trade show. I wondered if you might be able to tell us, I mean, it doesn't have to be the most exciting or sexy highlights, but some of the stuff that off the top of your head people can look forward to in the new version.
Yeah. The new version just came out. I've been beta testing it for the last few months and making sure that everything was as it's supposed to be. Not a lot of major features added, like in some of the previous versions. We saw 2, 3, 4, 5 pretty major features and capabilities within Ruby. This one had some expanded product lines, so we can run Ruby on some new models. We can do a couple new things. I mean, one of the first things that came out, and I would think one of the things that is been asked for years is what we call processing dynamic data. So if you've ever had that nameplate or serial number plate where it has a whole load of different serial numbers or names or dates or something that are on there, and you needed a different name, date, serial number, or something like that, some kind of dynamic data on a plate, and you didn't want to go in and literally type them in one by one or use your drawing program like CorelDRAW to design it. Ruby now has this feature built into it so that you can import your dynamic data and automatically create a design or drop in a design from your Corel or your Illustrator or a PDF. And then you can fill it with the dynamic data identifier. And we have a video right on our rubyhelp.com. It's going to walk you through step by step exactly how to do it, because it does have 2 or 3 different steps that you want to follow to get it precise. But that is a great new feature. This way you can drop in that name badges and automatically have it populate the names. You can bring in a serial number list and automatically have it drop in the name, and then it just outputs to your Trotec so that it doesn't.
Name tags, like you said, name tags is the one I always think of. You're doing name tags for a 200-person event. And I mean, look, all the more respect to the person who's had to go through in Corel and hand type out each one of those names every time. You're a braver soul than I. If you're going to type 200 names, wrote off of a spreadsheet and not misspell one, I mean, listen, you're a hero. But
let your client deliver the list so you can you can upload it, right?
That's exactly right. So that's a huge. I love that feature. Also, as you said, serialization. Obviously, I mean, serial numbers. That's a big one. But forgive me, I interrupted you. Were there any others? You mentioned coming onto new systems like greater.
Yes. I mean, there's other few minor things, like you can move the head to specific coordinates now on the non-run on Ruby machine. So you can type in a coordinate and your laser head will go over to that location. The newer systems also have an optical lens recognition system built in. So when you get new laser systems, they're going to have a little QR code on it. You can just push a button on it and your overhead camera will see what lens is in the machine and know what lens to focus to. So you don't even have to tell it what lens it is on the newer machines. This only is the newer machines. And so you need
love that.
Yeah. I haven't even tried it yet
so many times.
I haven't even tried it yet because I don't have the new lens yet, which has the code on it. It's like a little barcode. And then there's a little button on your touchscreen. This is only going to be on the newer machines, but it is, as things are becoming more user friendly to do that with. There's some changes to the settings and the menus, but the R series and the Q series laser machines are now supported fully on Ruby, non-beta releases. So if you have an R or a Q, we don't really sell too many Qs in the United States, but around the world, there are a lot of the Q series machines are now supported mainly with the Ruby software, and as well as the R series, R400 and R500 series machines are now supported fully in Ruby, and you can have all the benefits and capabilities of Ruby with those models of laser system.
That's awesome. I didn't realize that. That's fantastic because the R's are we're the same in Canada. Not a ton of Q systems here in Canada, but R systems certainly are popping up more and more these days. So it's nice to see them get some additional support. And those are great cutting machines. So I'm happy to see them get that.
It gives you a lot of machine for a low price and gives you that capability. But now combine that with the Ruby, it just gives you that power of the software, where in the past you had to go through the older style software through a printer driver, and now you can run without those constraints, as you will.
Yeah, and you can join us on these great seminars, these great webinars that we do once a month. We look forward to having all our more our R and Q friends join us in as well. I've got some great questions here in the background, and I've also got some great questions coming in the chat. I want to say hello to everybody. It's Jay Cost, Jim. Thank you so much for joining us. Amy, so great to see you. Amy was a regular joining us back in the day. She did a number of Rayjet challenges with myself and Miguel back in the day. She's a very talented illustrator and very talented laser artist herself. Definitely check her out online if you haven't already. I'm going to start right up at the top here with a great kind of Ruby themed question from Jay Koss, who asks if the system is compatible with a MacBook. And kind of as an extension of that, asking about Ruby, is Ruby internet based? But let's address this Mac question first. So what would be your gut answer to that, Dave?
That's a very, very common question. And it's one that has been the question that people have asked ever since, I think lasers came out, because graphic design is so synonymous. Well, just to give you an idea, I'm running from a Mac, and I have been running from a Mac for about a year now, because Ruby now works from a Mac. There are a few caveats. It needs to be the newer run on Ruby machines that have the onboard run on Ruby computer system built inside the laser machine. If you have any of the newer machines, which have been out now year and a half, almost 2 years, then yes. I mean, I can run it from a Mac. I can run it from iOS. I can run it from a Chromebook. I can run it from Windows. You're no longer constrained at all from any operating system, because it is browser based. It's not web based. You don't need to go online to use it, but you need a network within your office or your home, and then you can run it from that. So you basically go to like a web page, and then you have access to the Ruby software, and it doesn't matter what your operating system is. As long as you can go to a web page, you have access to Ruby.
I was hoping you'd go there, because that kind of answers the next question there from Jay, which is about, whether it is internet-based or it's downloaded onto the computer. It is kind of both, in as much as it is downloaded onto your computer like an application, but when you open it, it simply opens in an internet browser. It does not require that you be always connected, though, by any means. You can run it offline if that would be your preference. Certainly, we have customers who, have quite a tight internet security setup, and so they have to run it offline. It does require internet for the initial installation, is my understanding, but following that, you're kind of in the free and clear to run it however is most convenient for you. Probably the home network, I would say, is what I hear the most often is the most convenient. Hey, would you agree that, because like I say, it gives you that flexibility to,
super easy to do that. Yeah, I know we have some military customers and stuff that are in high security environments where they can't be online. So this machine works just fine, and they still have networks. It can be a wireless or wired network, depending on how you do it. I run a complete wireless network, so anything within my local network, as long as I'm within my Wi-Fi zone, I can access my laser. Once I leave that Wi-Fi zone, I can no longer access the laser unless I have like a shared server or something like that I can log into that's already on the network. And that's how you could review it remotely, but you would have to set something like that up.
Just to quickly add to what you're saying too, what you're describing, where you can run from the MacBook or from a Chromebook, from an iPad. I mean, all of these different operating systems with the newest kind of run on Ruby machines from the last, as you say, maybe 12 months to 18 months at most there, is absolutely, of course, bang on the money. But even if you have an older system that's running Ruby and you have, a local PC hooked up to your computer or to your laser, pardon me, you can still use a MacBook with one of the sub accounts for your Ruby. It just can't be the main computer that's hooked into your laser.
Yes.
One of the real cool drivers about the new run on Ruby machines is that they have all of that kind of, they take that question of, a separate tower or PC off the table. It's all kind of built right into the machine. So then you're able to just, as Dave says, you have the flexibility to use whatever operating system you prefer. But if you have an older machine, don't feel like you can't use your MacBook. It's completely off the table. It just has to be, a sub account on your Ruby that you use, principally for designing and sending files to the main hub PC that runs the laser itself.
You will need that initial PC, but then you can run entirely off of your Mac. But it will still need that PC plugged into it. And so it's kind of a stepping stone, if you will, where the run on Ruby machines have basically a computer inside the cavity. And that's the difference, is you would be providing that on the older ones prior to that that change where we put them inside the machine.
Mm-hmm. So now, Dave, as I said, I'm going to put you a little bit on the spot here because I have a question from Jim specifically about a video of yours.
Okay.
And I think this is a great set of questions, and I'm going to kind of shrink them down, Jim. And if there's anything I don't cover, you feel free to come back to us. But I wanted to start from a lot of Jim's questions are around this idea of finding the right settings. So he mentions right here, he phrases it well. I know settings are a starting point, but how do you create parameters and rename them from the base settings, or how are you finding those right perfect settings for your material? We'll come back to your specific question in just a second, but I wanted to get Dave's feeling on, best practice for finding the right settings for a new material if it's your first time. Because he mentions, he was following a Laser Dave video on glass where you used a glass setting, and he didn't have that listed in his kind of base, material settings. So when you're looking for a new setting, what's the Laser Dave trick? How do you
settings can be difficult, especially if you're a novice or you're just getting started, or if you haven't worked with the material. There is, the thing with a parameter or a setting on a laser machine is it's really in the eye of the beholder. There's no wrong setting. It's each material has what we consider a range of settings, depending on how deep you want to go, how dark you want to go, the effects that you want. And so when it comes to creating a new parameter, it does come down to a little bit of trial and error, a little bit of experience, maybe working with an existing material that's similar and then using those similar settings in there. And then once you dial in that setting and figure out what it might be, typically experience definitely helps. I could tell you, even if I've never used a material with as much experience as I have, I could tell you a material that'll get you 95% of the way there just by telling me your wattage. And so that experience does help, but it does come to playing with it and running little matrix. If you've seen some of my older videos that I posted online for the Can You Laser It series, I kind of walk through that and showcase kind of how I dial in the settings. I start with like high power and low speed, and then I walk through and run some different little boxes or a little small amount of text, and then run the setting, watch to see the effect that I want. If it's way too dark, too light, then I will change one setting at a time. Most of the time I won't. In this case, this was the glass settings. If you do it at 100% black, even at that same power setting, you get the chipping and flaking. So this had to do with experimentation and just experience where I ran through, and when I ran it in grayscale, it would separate your pulse width at the same power setting and then it basically spread the laser beam apart, producing smaller and or little laser pulses, and spread it apart to keep that flaking and chipping from happening. And when you do that, you do get a little rougher edge quality. So my trick in this case was to add a black outline to eliminate that rough edge. And so you get the benefit of the pulses spread apart, but the edges aren't as sharp. And so if you take the same grayscale, or in this case, a lighter grayscale, and add a black outline, you kind of get the best of both worlds. The edges will be nice, crisp, and sharp, but then the insides will be opened up, the pulse width. And so when the laser runs at different grayscales, it actually changes how many times the laser pulses. It's kind of like an old newspaper print called a halftone. And so you get that on-off motion on the inside, but the edges are going to be sharp because it's black in this case. And so this was a trial and error basis where I just found power. I know glass is a high, very, very dense material. So I'm going to peak my power out, max it out, 100%. And then I know because it is so dense, I need to slow down. and in order to slow down. And so you can see at 100% power here, it gives you a plume effect because it's firing the laser so much more rapidly. Where if you then run it at, say, 30% grayscale, I think the video stopped here. Oh, there it goes. You can actually see the lasers are turning on and off, and it reduces the overall amount of heat into the material. And this is the case. When it comes to dialing in parameters, all we are doing is trying to control heat. And heat is our enemy, if you will. We want it to work for what we want it. We want it to do our bidding, but we also don't want the negative effects of heat, like the chipping and flaking, or if we're cutting wood, for example, or engraving wood, we want more heat to give you that dark effect, where if you hit it really fast and quick, you're going to find that it's just not dark enough. And so it does take a lot of trial and errors. I think I will add that video, really kind of deep dive with Laser Dave on dialing in parameters on some of your more common materials. I've done one in the past, but that was pre-Ruby. So I think it may be time to do another more updated version of that.
I think that could be helpful. I think you touched on some really, really great points too, particularly for if you're early in your kind of journey with Trotec or with laser in general, that I wanted to double back on really fast, because they are things that I still remind customers of all the time. And I still have to remind myself of all the time, which is, number one, it's very dependent on your laser's wattage, of course. Yeah. So even though, you'll open up Ruby and it's exciting and the settings in there are good, as even Jim in the chat says, they're jumping off points. They are starting points, because they are, whether you buy a 120 watt laser or a 30 watt laser, everybody gets the same settings in that Ruby configuration there. So, you use that is a general, and then you're going to use that to fine tune. And I think one thing that you mentioned too, we had a great sample piece in our Ontario head office that I haven't seen in a little while, but it was 4 images, very much in the style of Warhol, 4 images of Marilyn Monroe, all kind of gridded together. And it was the same wood used for every single one. And all we did was adjust the settings, and you get 4 wildly different images just by using either more power, more speed, less power, less speed, etc. So it's really down to, at some level, what you or your customer prefers aesthetically also. There's no, as you said, right or wrong answer. It's just whatever you are looking for that particular job.
Yeah, it's a range of ansers. And so sometimes running a matrix where you run, 10%, 20%, 30%, 40%. So you leave your power alone or at 100%, and then you just change the speed and run 10, 12 different boxes and even label them, and then look at them and say, okay, well, for this job, I want to run at this setting, and at this job, I want to run this setting. And you can make a custom setting. Yeah. And so, and Don was absolutely right. The parameters in there are a baseline. They're going to get you there. It's basically what we got together and said, hey, this looks good. Here's the parameter for, maple wood. But is that the depth you want? Are you doing an inlay? Do you want darker? Do you want to go faster? It's really in the eye of the beholder. So use that as a stepping stone and modify it a little bit. Reach out to one of our experts, myself, on our websites or anything like that, and say, what parameters do you do to do deep engraving, light engraving? And I can point you to a video. We can just give you some numbers and get you much closer based on our experience.
Yep. And it's one of the areas where, much as I do love Ruby, I think there is a bit in the nomenclature that can be a bit tricky, where if it says like engraving dark or engraving, like some of the effects are named as such that you would think that this just automatically gives you a dark engraving. Not necessarily. Those effects are doing specific things to your engraving, but they are nothing that you can't accomplish with just, adjusting of the settings themselves. I would say too, I'd be curious to know your feelings on this, Dave, but like I worked, prior to starting with Trotec, I worked as a freelance, in marketing and advertising, and I did some work, freelance graphic design and things. Even if you think what looks nice, you can never anticipate what a client is going to want.
For sure.
So what I love about the matrix is if they bring you the material and you do a matrix, exactly as Dave is describing, where you leave either, say power or speed level, and you just gradually increment or de-increment the other to get a sample of, across 16 boxes or whatever of what's possible. It allows you and the customer, ahead of doing a giant project, to pick and go, hey, here are the range of colors that I can do roughly on this material. Which do you like best? And ahead of doing this giant, portrait or something for you, where your customer might come in and say, oh, I expected it to be darker, or I expected it to be lighter, whatever. It allows you to sort of say, well, Mr. Customer, we talked about this beforehand and we chose the color ahead of time. I'm happy to redo it and do it darker, but you are going to have to pay for a second. Kind of protecting yourself from that classic artist's trick of like, oh, I expected it to be X or Y, before you put in hours and hours and hours into your work trying to, nail down exactly what this is going to look like. Quick question then for you. I'm going to come over back here to my chat from ORG Tech BD. who says they haven't used Ruby yet and are asking if it will import their Corel files. Yes, here is a great. Okay, thank you to Lev and Corey on that.
This was basically a video that went through and actually showcased utilizing the different matrix codes, and then just using different colors, showcasing it in a wheel here, so you could actually take and engrave that, and then engrave this matrix code with power and or speed. And this is back with the Ruby, and that's why I say I think, or the job control software. That's why I say I think I need to update this and showcase how to do this in Ruby. Believe it or not, it's actually a little more complex to set up all 16 colors, but once you got it set up, it's run. It enables you to run. So in this case, this was the parameters just in power. So as you can see, as I increase in power, you start to see not too much change on wood. And so in that case, I would then go now to speed. So I'm going to run at 100% power, and then now I'm just going to adjust speed. And so what I'm doing is taking the 16 colors that are automatically designed in both job control and Ruby, and then I'm assigning a different speed to each one of these colors that are a default parameter. And then I rerun this wheel, and this wheel now is going to give me, now we're at 100% power, but now we're running at 20, 30, 40, 50% speed. And so now you're seeing the entire matrix of a material. And this is just maple. So you would do one of these little wheels. You can find this video on our YouTube channel if you want to watch it. I do, like I say, want to update it for Ruby to show you the difference in the steps. But this is a great one to kind of show you what we mean by the entire parameter set or variable settings that can be associated with a material.
Yeah. One trick I learned, it's not even a trick really, but one thing I learned too late in terms of testing settings, and I have to remind myself now even to do, is as you're going along, make sure you note which is which. Just even if it's like a little Sharpie marker or whatever, just when the piece comes out, don't think, oh, I'll remember which one this was. You won't.
Sometimes I'll engrave the setting. So if I'm running 20%, I type 20% and run it at 20%.
Yes.
So the engraving is actually your setting. Yeah. So yeah, because I'll forget. I'm like, which one was this? What did I do here? I like this. How do I get back to it?
Yes. And seeing it on the wheel there really like clearly notated was what made me think of like, oh yes, whether it's really well done as Dave did it or badly done with the Sharpie afterwards as I did it.
Well, the nice thing about
you note it as you go along.
You can show that to a client and you can say, okay, here's maple. Here's all the parameters, which one you want. And then you can have a different charge point. It's like, okay, if you want it this deep, it's going to cost more because it takes you more time.
Yes, totally.
So, I mean, that could be a tool to make more money for you if they kind of want to pick the difference. And you can have variable because the processing time can vary and the time varies and you charge by the hour. There you go. So, and you do that for the 3, 4, 5 materials that you do with your clients. And that's all you need to do.
100%. And I think too, both not only is that file, then you could take that file and reuse it on their material if the customer brings you one. But I also like that it allows you to, sometimes you'll have customers who will come in and ask, I want you to engrave this deep and I want it this color. You know what I mean? Because they might not have any idea of how laser works or what you can show them that and say, well, this is kind of a general, let's build off of this, as opposed to just some wild, imagination. So coming back to this question really quick from OrgTech BD about, having not used Ruby yet, I would highly encourage you to jump over. Will it import my Corel files? In my experience, I do not have a ton of experience in doing the jump over. I don't know if you can import spool files directly from job control, but what I will say is I know that you can simply take, if you have the CDR files on your hard drive or whatever, you can just drag and drop them directly into Ruby and, you're good to go.
Yeah, the nice thing about Ruby is it don't require a print driver, so you don't have to hit file print and then send it to your job control to have it in there. Literally, you save your CorelDRAW files, which you already have saved, and you can hit the import button in Ruby and just select them, or you can literally drag them from a folder on another screen and just drag them right into Ruby, and there's your CorelDRAW files. Any version of CorelDRAW will bring it right in. It'll also support PNG formats. It'll support most every common vector format out there, your PDF, your AI format, Adobe Illustrator formats, SVG formats, PDFs, and DXF formats. And so literally you just drag them right into Ruby and then they store them in there. So you have access to modifying, adjusting them within Ruby. You don't have to go back and forth to CorelDRAW for major or minor changes, only major changes. So it saves you a lot of time.
Yes, absolutely. I most notice it when it's, and we've talked about this every time I think we've done these webinars, but for me, it was always little typos. little things where, as
Right.
opposed to having to reopen a whole nother software just to adjust to type 2 letters on the thing, you know what I mean? Oh,
Yes, right.
great.
It's great for dyslexia when you spell something wrong, right?
Oh, the worst. And then I think about what you were talking about earlier with the automatic, like the bringing over of, a whole list of names or serial numbers or whatever. Again, having to type those out. If you had to then go back to Corel every time you made a typo,
Yeah.
I mean,
Yeah, for sure.
it's anybody who runs a small business with a laser, I think, can identify that. Obviously, as you sort of pointed out earlier, in talking about materials as well, time is going to be probably
Time. That's what Ruby saves
one of
you,
your
is
biggest
massive
resources.
amounts of time. Yeah, for sure. You're not going back and forth. You're not waiting for that Windows spooler. Ruby is a far more efficient tool, and in my opinion, the most efficient tool for running a laser on the planet.
I have a question from the back end here. I think it might have just gotten reposted by Cam in the chat, but I'm going to read the question here from the back end because I think it is really, really good. So we currently run job control because it has the ability to slow down the engraving rotation speed. For example, in job control, we have to run at 3% rotation speed due to the weight and size of our product. Otherwise, it does not. Otherwise, it does a stop shock in between the blank spaces. I went to test Ruby at Trotec US, and they could not figure out how to slow down the engraving rotary speed in the back end of Ruby. The solution is of putting a solid line off of the engraving to not have this won't work. Yes, yes, won't work.
That's a great question. It's not even one that I have tried in Ruby. I do know what you're talking about, is when you have that, what we call pen up, when the beam stops and then it has to rotate, say, to another location or a different side of a product.
Yes.
If you have that counterweight, like a handle or something like that, and it accelerates too quick, it can cause it to slip if it's not in there tight enough. That is a great question. I do not know if there is a Ruby adjustment for that. It would be in the service. That would be more of a service question. They have an actual adjustment in there. I'd have to look at Ruby to see if they have added that. I do know that that was something that was inquired about, and whether it's in there yet or no, I haven't come across a scenario where I've needed it. So unfortunately, I don't have a direct answer for you. We may have to get back to you on that.
Part of the reason I wanted to bring it up is because I had also heard that it was something that has been given as a piece of feedback to, on the developer side in Austria. So I want you to know certainly that it's one that they've heard and are certainly working on. Unfortunately, I think Dave's right. I don't think it has been implemented yet, but it is certainly very high on the list of things that I know that they are trying to do, because we have had some previous updates that have come where the rotary, was even giving Dave and I some headaches. So I think it's something that they are certainly aware of, and they want to be sure works well, because obviously in job control, engraving with a rotary is really, really nice and works very, very well. I think it's well thought through. Let's say that.
I was just looking in the user device settings in Ruby right now to see if I see any of that under the factory calibration setting, but I'm not seeing anything currently. But that could just be me. Like I say, I mean, it's not one I run into that often. Even when I do mug handles and stuff, the speeds on the Ruby aren't as fast. Some of the job control ones shot too fast, and maybe I'm in my experience, they've calibrated it to where I have not run into the problem at all. So, I mean, it may be that they solved it by just adjusting that total speed. But that is something we need to look further into, I think.
Definitely. And I think Cam makes a good point, which is that, like, for most people, it may not be an issue, but if you are doing an especially heavy product, or as you said, something with, say, a handle or something like that, I can certainly see how that would pop up. It becomes just enough of a fringe case that unfortunately it's not handled by the overall update to the thing. But it's
really not as high as the priority, unfortunately. Yeah.
Dave and I can hound these guys to try and get that done for you. That's what we're
I do what I can, I promise.
Yes, absolutely. One other one I wanted to touch on really quickly here from the back end, because it is one that I don't know a ton about, and I wanted to know if you did, which is cutting carbon-filled and oil-extended rubber. I do not have a great deal of experience doing rubber. I know stamps tend to be difficult, let's say that, because they do generate a lot of smoke in the same way that wood does, say, and that they are, maybe a bit trickier on you need a little bit more experience with the laser to do them really well, I would say, just because there's a few more steps than might be with, say, a more typical thing. But I'd be curious to hear kind of your feedback.
Yeah, that kind of material. Yeah, I mean, because most plastic is made of oil anyway, so it's not that big of a deal when it comes to the laser, and it works just fine. The key is you want to, of course, like I said before, the laser's all about controlling the heat so that it does what we want, but doesn't cause a problem when it comes to quality and efficiency. And so when doing that type of stuff, it really depends on the thickness that you're cutting, and the wattage that you're using. Higher wattages for thicker materials definitely take more power to do that. There are some cases where if you don't have enough to get through these rubber type materials in one pass, you'll never make it through. Multiple passes won't cut through because what happens is they start carbonizing, where it builds up carbon on the cut line and it encapsulates that heat and kind of stores it. So if you hit it with a second pass, nothing happens. It don't go through no matter how much power you have. And so if you don't have enough initially to get through some of these rubber type materials or oil-based materials, you won't get through. And it's nothing you're doing wrong. Where other materials, you can hit it with a second pass maybe and finish through. So it has to do with the total peak power. It takes a lot of laser power to get through that. In addition, of course, you want to use your air assist nozzle with the small mouth cone, downdraft vacuum table, high power, full 100% power. And then, of course, you want to get through, if you're cutting it, low enough speed, low frequency. Low frequency is going to reduce the amount of heat and keep any type, reduce, I should say, the chance of any flare-ups from happening when cutting these materials. But there are scenarios where you're running a 30 watt or a 50 or even an 80 watt, and your thickness, no matter what you do, you can't get through it. Especially some of these like carbon-based rubbers or the heat-based rubber type materials similar to that. It doesn't matter. 120 will get through in one pass, no problem. And 80, I can hit it with 20 passes. It'll never make it through. It's because the total peak power is only 80 watts. And no matter how slow you go, it's not enough to penetrate in one pass. So there are scenarios where more power is definitely your friend. But in most cases, these materials work just fine. You just make sure you play with your parameters until you find what works.
Yes. Also, I would, so this might be a silly question, but what that makes me think of also is using a speed marker to mark certain I'm thinking of things like brass metals that are really, really difficult to get deep. Yeah. The only way I've ever heard is to have essentially like a very high power, like a 50 or 100 watt fiber laser, and then you're basically having to do cleaning passes every few passes to kind of get rid of the slag. Basically, the melted kind of accumulated metal that you're taking out sort of accumulates in those ruts, and then you have to get rid of that before you can get any deeper.
Yeah, you build up that kind of that layer. But I mean, when it comes to a galvo and metal, even lower wattages can produce depth. But you are right; you have to do a cleanup pass. It takes longer, but I ran almost 2 or 3 millimeters into hardened steel with a 20 watt MOPA. Fiber laser, and no problem. Oh. Yeah, it took me 45 minutes, but okay. I was able to get it, and it is possible. But yeah, when it comes to rubber materials, it's a little bit different because the galvos can change angles, change direction, change wavelength, change frequency. Right. They have so much more control. It very much makes it more complicated, but with that control comes more ability.
You've mentioned frequency a few times, and Jim mentions it here in our chat, so I have to come back to it. I know it is too complicated of a subject to necessarily distill down into maybe
I've got a real good analogy for frequency.
Please, fire away. Most people, the question I get is, what does it even do? I feel like I've messed with that number up and down, and it doesn't seem to make any difference.
In most materials, you won't see a difference. What frequency does is it controls what's called pulse duration, or how many times your laser fires within as it's traveling. The higher the frequency, the more times. And the analogy I use is, think of a low frequency like a sewing machine stitch, like it's stitching a piece of fabric. And think of a high frequency like an embroidery mark, like my Trotec logo, where it's got lots of stitches in a small amount of area. That is what frequency does for you. And so higher frequency is going to produce more heat. So materials like acrylics and stuff, you get a more flame polished, beautiful edge quality, where materials like woods and rubbers, you don't want that heat, but you still want to penetrate through. It's going to give you that more sewing machine stitch where you're still cutting through, but there's less overlapping pulses. It's also other brands and stuff will call it pulses per inch or pulse PPI. It's very, very similar in what it does. It's basically how many times that laser fires a laser at whatever speed you're running. So this is why it doesn't affect time. It doesn't affect productivity, but it can affect quality, especially on cutting. For engraving, it's not something that will do anything. It's mainly for cutting is where you're going to see notable changes.
Yeah, I'm just looking around to see if I have any transparent acrylic around me, because I'd love to show.
Well, another good one is if you've ever tried to cut paper really fast and you're at 1,000 hertz, all of a sudden you get this perforation. And then if you want that perforation to go away, bring your frequency up to 3, 4, 5,000 hertz, and all of a sudden the perforation goes away. because you're moving so quickly and the laser's firing so quickly, it's not overlapping. And so that's where you really see a difference, is on those thin materials that tend to start perforating at high speeds, where higher frequency can eliminate that problem. So just increase your frequency a little bit until that problem goes away, and that'll solve the problem. But that's a very visual application where you would see the difference in frequency.
And also, don't be tripped up by the difference, as you kind of hinted at. It was one that got me, and I think still sometimes I mix up. But we're talking about you can adjust DPI, obviously, in your settings, and then PPI or frequency. But really, they're in the same universe, but they're not doing exactly the same thing.
Not at all. DPI is how many lines per inch, and so it's like your printer applying more lines as it's printing out, and so that will dramatically affect time. You know, the time, if it takes a minute to do 500 DPI, it's going to take 2 minutes to do 1,000 DPI, but your quality will double, or the amount of resolution will double if your material can handle it.
Yep. And also, I will say I found some tricky materials, like wood is one that I think of, where I am able to drop the DPI and not see a huge difference in the resolution of the image that I'm producing, because wood tends to swell and, you know, all these different
forgiving
things.
Yeah,
exactly. Whereas other materials, you might see a huge difference between 1,000 DPI and 333 or 250, right? So it really depends on, you know, it's another one that I would recommend testing on the matrix if you're interested to know. And
anodized aluminum is a good one. Here's one that I ran at 250 DPI. Just running from an AI image. This is a video I posted because it came out good, and I always throw a camera on stuff, so I went ahead and run it. And I also launched a new AI video today, which showcases all the AI stuff we talked about in our last webinar. So if you guys want to go on and take a look at that, that was just launched about an hour and a half ago. So yeah, you can see there, you know, how we can take that. And that was 250 DPI. So, but again, it's very forgiving material. Came out great. Using an AI generated image of this cool little ram, which is with a white background on a tree slice. So,
and that was the reason I wanted to mention it, because 250 DPI, I think, is the second lowest preset that it would allow you. So you would assume it's going to come out like a Crayola, like garbage, right? But it's gorgeous.
Not on a material that can handle it.
Balance, right?
Yep. Yeah. And my suggestion, if you're not familiar with DPI, is to run the same graphic, like a little RAM or a little piece like that, and take it on material and run it at, 125, 250, 333, 500, 600, and 1,000, and put them all side by side. My photo seminar, or my photo video I launched about a month and a half ago, goes through and does that. It actually has a photograph run at all 6 of our DPIs and side by side. And it also shows you the time difference. So you can really see that in the photo seminar on that video.
Yeah. Highly recommend you watch that video for anybody who hasn't. I am not entirely caught up on Dave's videos. I should be, but that one is one that
I did. Last week I did the epoxy resin, or resin, UV and epoxy resin inlays and fills and stuff. That one.
God,
what's that?
That's so cool. That's such
Did
a
you
cool
see it?
application.
Yeah. No, that was a fun one to do. Got my hands dirty on that one. But yeah, that took about 3 weeks to make. But man, it was a fun time. So yeah, if you haven't got around to it, take a look at it. It was a fun one to make.
One, too, that I will mention just to close out this discussion on DPI really fast, and I always mention it because it is a good piece of advice. It's one that Mike Clark gave me. Forgive me if this is crass, but it is always still remembering that crap in, crap out. That, like, if
garbage in, garbage out.
Exactly right. That RAM image was beautiful at 250 DPI, but you started with a beautiful image. And do not let your customer, if they come to you with a grainy, blurry, World War I era photo, the laser is a beautiful tool for reproducing what you're giving it, but it can only reproduce what you give it. So if it's blurry in, it's going to be blurry coming out. Upping the DPI on something that's already of a low resolution will not save,
well, I don't know. As we showed last week or a week ago in our AI one, you can drop in these old battered images, put it through these AIs, and they literally regenerate these things as though they were taken a week ago. So
that's true. That's true. But if you're doing that, I hope you were charging your customer for the extra process.
Yeah. Well, and that's what you say. And don't tell them how you know how to do it. But yeah, if you go back to our AI one we did, was it 2 weeks ago? We actually showcased that. It's pretty amazing, and it's still evolving. So those problems, as Don just said, are solutions are arising to solve them.
Yes. And if, like you said, if you don't tell them how you did it, you just do it, they will think you're a wizard.
You're a master.
It's amazing. A quick question. I'm going to rapid fire a couple at you here, Dave. Again, No guarantees that we will know these, especially me. But I will say, anyone that you guys throw at us, if it's too complicated or too technical that we can't answer right here on the spot, please rest assured that we take these back to our team in Austria and our home teams here in the US and Canada and try and get the ball rolling on these, like we were talking about with Cam earlier. So there's nothing that's off the table. Throw us any questions you got. One quick here from Matthew, who asks, can the stock materials be renamed? Some of them are so long that they cut off the thickness at the end, e.g. Trolleys, laminates, ADA, acrylic, ... But it cuts off the 1/8 inch or the 1/16 inch, and the panel can't be resized, which that drives me insane because I frequently have that same problem. I want to say that they can be renamed, but I could be wrong.
Just go hit your 3 little hamburgers in the upper left-hand corner. Yeah, actually,
into the material settings.
Yeah, Corey, if you want to switch to my other screen here, you can see it here. So on the materials database here, if you hit the little button in the bottom corner, go to materials, and then click on the material itself, and then click the little pencil right next to it. And in that case, I can just start adjusting it. And then if I make an adjustment, we can just hit save as new, or we can modify it and you can change it to whatever you want and you can make adjustments to that. So yeah, easily change one of those names. You can see all my preset custom, but some of these get kind of long out here and you don't want any of this extra data. Maybe I don't need the material thickness. I can come in here and make it just 1. And then I can make any adjustments to my down, and then I can just hit the save button right here. And next time I come in here, it's going to save. I'm not going to save it because I don't want to save it. But that's as simple as it is in order to change a parameter or material setting in Ruby. And then when you go back into your parameter set here, it will show immediately on your list over on the right here.
Quick question for you from James Walters. Will the Ruby software work with the RayJet 50? I don't think so. Not yet, at least.
Yeah, I do know that there was talk about that, and there was a beta version that was working. I don't know that it's been a full release. There is a beta version that was out. I don't know if it's still out. That is a good question. So, I mean, the goal is to all models will be eventually Ruby. So,
yes,
just give it time. Our software guys have a lot on their plate. They were like, add all these new features, but also get all the old models working and operational. So it's been
we found this bug and this bug and this bug.
Or fix these. Oh my God. Or make this better or change this. Yeah, it's got to be a stressful scenario for those guys, and so we just got to be patient with them.
Yeah, but I do know. I mean, look, I wouldn't go on record as saying this, but it has always been my understanding that it is coming to the RayJet 50. I know that they are. Without giving away too much, I think the RayJet 50 is under a lot of scrutiny right now. I think they're maybe looking to, bring a lot of like renewal and life to that machine because it hasn't seen a big, update and upgrade in a few years, and it is just a bulletproof, beautiful little machine.
Yeah,
so
it's
definitely into their crosshairs.
Yeah, and it's a little tank too, man. That thing will it could be 10 years old and you fire it up and it just goes.
100%. It's why we did those. It's funny that Amy's here for this chat. Actually, it's why we did those RayJet challenges back in the day, Miguel and I, because we wanted to show not only, was this just because it's the smallest machine, by no means is it less fully featured. It has its limits just because of its size, but its size can also be, a benefit. As you say, that thing is bulletproof.
Yeah.
And quite frankly, you can toss it on a desk and use it,
let it rip, right?
For
sure.
So Jim has a couple of questions here. I'm going to try and bring them together, but he makes, I think, a really, really good point. And one thing that still, I think, trips even me up when it comes to Ruby. I want to make sure that I get this right because the parameter effects. I think Jim is looking to use specifically the effects and is looking for the best ways, to approach finding new settings using the effects. So he mentions,
the effects confuse a lot of people because they don't do anything.
Me included. Yeah.
The key is effects don't, they're there for a visual simulation of what you want to do with it. If you want to switch back to my screen here, I'll show you. So into the materials, if I click a material and I click add effect to material. So when you click add effect to the material, you're going to see I have all kinds of them on here. I've got numbers. I've got new customs. These don't actually do anything. They're for your own personal reference. That's
Yes.
it. And so all that I'll call it blue, and I was calling that effect blue because when I was doing a titanium engraving and I wanted to engrave the color blue, I would call the effect blue so that when I selected blue, it would engrave blue on the metal. That is it. The effect is named because that's what I wanted to name it as. Other than that, the only other difference would be whether you engrave or if you are cutting or marking. And so, and that difference is if I wanted to go down and actually say, I wanted a mark setting or I wanted a cut speed, or if it's cut quality, there's no difference between cut quality. But if I run my cut quality at really slow, then it will cut with better quality because I assigned a setting for that. I find this is more confusing than it's worth because, again, these do nothing except give you a visual representation of what that setting will do. If you just pick one and it's engraved and then you want it to engrave with quality and it says it's going to engrave with speed, it's going to engrave with quality. It's purely, these are labels for you, and that's it. End of story, with only one exception, and that is I'm trying to remember what it was called, the mask. This mask one, if you click the mask one, it in essence puts it on here, but it gives no parameters at all. So you can assign a color to a mask setting and say yellow, and then when you make the mask setting, it'll show on the screen, but it's never going to cut, mark, or engrave. It's going to do nothing. It's basically a placeholder or a visual representation from an outline. So if you make your template fixture or something yellow, you know how to position it, but you know it's never going to cut or engrave. And that would be the only one that would actually do anything, besides the fact that if you make it engrave or cut, or basically the process. So you would want to set the process up for whether or not, but a lot of times I will do numbers when I'm doing like a matrix chart, and I just assign each one a different number. And so that I can assign all 16 different colors, and then make each one of these setting a different color in the parameters, a parameter color when I'm doing like a matrix wheel, like we saw earlier. That's what all the different ones are here. But I can make any one of them I want. I mean, if I want to make a new one, I can make this one ruby setting, and I want that setting to be cut, and then I hit OK, and now what? I have a ruby setting. What is a ruby setting?
It's just a setting.
The ruby setting is the most awesome setting, and it's because I said it is, and that's it.
Yes, correct. Empirically, Your Honor. It's close.
Yeah. So I hope that explains it. You're right; it does confuse a lot of people, and it's difficult to comprehend that it's just a labeling capability for you.
Me included, because when I first saw it, I said, well, like, why wouldn't I just add, well, I want this to be quality and speed, so I'll just put both of these on here, right? But they don't technically do anything by themselves. They rely on you to then, it is a bit of
a little confusing. I think there might have been a better way to go about that in naming, but it is what it is at this point.
Yes. And I hope that helps to kind of clear it up. At the end of the day, if you're looking for settings for something, the effects are not where you're looking. It is always going to be just about trying to balance those parameters in the best
power,
way
speed, frequency, DPI. That's your only adjustment to the actual material.
Yes, sir. Exactly right. I've got a question here from the back end. On the manage screen, is there a way to expand the list of jobs in the queue?
On the manage screen, expand the list of jobs. I guess. What?
So you mean like physically,
because right now on the manage screen you have all your designs, and you can put as many of them in here as you want. If I want to add new ones, I guess what do they mean by expand? Like make them all I
think they literally mean like maybe blow out the window larger, but I don't think you can adjust the size of the window. You can only adjust the size of the internet browser window itself.
I mean, when you touch like here, you can see what they are. So like if I need to see this file, I can see it without actually doing it. And same on the jobs here. You can click on the jobs, and when you hold your mouse, it's going to show you what that job is. But it's not going to give you like a matrix or a like a thumbnail view. That would be a nice feature though, if we could switch to like a thumbnail view. But right now, no. I mean, it's just the list here that you can visually chop
a list of things to send to the to the team.
Yes. I mean, all these ones are really good. Of course, if you ever have those type, go down to ideas right here, click on it. And when you click on ideas, it's going to pop up a screen. Of course, it goes to a web page on another screen, so I don't have it here. Basically, just fill out the 2 little sentences when it pops up and say, hey, I would really like this feature. Here's my name, my email address. You'll get a response back saying we're going to add it to it. And if multiple people are asking for similar things, it's going to be prioritized.
Yes, 100%. I can vouchsafe that 100 million%. I've seen it happen.
I put ones in there, and all of a sudden they were there. Yeah.
Yeah. In fact, the addition of the what you were talking about just at the top of the hour with the print merge is what I always want to call it, but the automatic listing and stuff. The print merge feature is one that got highly requested and got bumped up the list for that exact reason. Another one here, this I think is an amazing, how to use Ruby in a classroom with 30 students. So first and foremost, thank you for your service. What I will say is, I can't give you an outline of exactly how to use Ruby in a classroom, but what I will say is, Dave, can you speak on the difference between an administrator account and the sub accounts, and how each one is divided? Because in my mind, what it would be is you have, the teacher or the administrator, whoever has that main account, and then you could hypothetically give students access on sub accounts that would allow them, to do a lot of what Ruby can do, but never actually put the laser in motion. You're kind of, as I understand it, a sub account is going to be able to do everything except kind of kick that laser off.
Yeah, within Ruby, it does give you the ability to add additional accounts, and each one of these accounts can be limited. If we go back to my screen here, I can actually show what it is. And so when you're going into user management here, you can add additional access. And so I can click up here, I can hit add user, and I can actually just put an email address in, and then it will add an additional user. At that point, with additional users, as the administrator, you can come in here and change administrative permissions. I don't have any other on here, so it's not going to show it here, but you can basically give them as little or as much control as they want. They only see their files. They only see what they're working on. Everybody, if they're logged in, it sends an email to them. Each one of the students would put in their email address, and they would have their own version of Ruby. They can run on it. They can only see their files. When they hit file print and send it to the laser, the run on Ruby machines will show on the screen, and they can run their job. You as the teacher or the administrator or the manager, depending on what you're doing, would then be able to see all the different parameter or the different people on this list. And give them as much full control. They can make adjustments. They can make manual settings. They can only use the database. And so that's it. You literally give them the control, assign one to every student or every person on your running a machine. And then they have that ability. And so we really kind of constrict what they can do. They can run it from their own, Chromebook or MacBook on their computer, on their desk, and do all their designing in their Illustrator, CorelDRAW, or write in Ruby. And then they can send it to it, walk over to the machine. Then they'll see a list of all the other students on that machine. They select the one their file, and then go ahead and focus and run their machine or run their product.
Yeah, exactly. Or if you're the teacher in that respect and you have it set so that they can't, run the project themselves, it allows you then to be the one to say when the laser goes and, make sure from a safety perspective. But I think that would be my initial kind of gut reaction to that question. Definitely. I think
and the file don't start when they send it to the laser. It just goes into the queue. So somebody has to be there in order to run the laser itself. And so just because they hit print and send it down to the laser doesn't mean it will start running. It's not like a printer. And so this way an operator can be in there actually running the files and get the products running, especially if they're all running a similar project. It makes it easy because they all position it in the same spot. It's using the same parameter, and it makes it easy, especially when they're starting out. And then as it gets more complicated, they learn the differences.
We are just about at the top of the hour here. So I will just, again, a huge thank you to everybody who joined us in the chat and everybody who submitted questions beforehand. Obviously, we couldn't do the show without you guys. We really, really appreciate you. In the same way that it's nice to be able to drive ideas and stuff back to the main developer team for, knowing what you guys want to prioritize. Doing shows like this allows us to know, and kind of feed it back that way too. I did have one last question here from Jim in the chat for you, David, something you mentioned earlier. How does one reach out to Dave in his creative Trotec fortress? If you are looking to contact your local Trotec, whether it is where Dave is situated or anywhere in North America at very least, I would always recommend it. I would always recommend getting to come down and check out a demo. But probably the easiest way is just to go right to the website, I assume, eh, Dave?
Yeah, I mean, if you have questions on any of the videos or anything like that, you can just reach out on the videos. I'm constantly monitor those. So if you have questions and stuff like that, and then any one of your local areas, you can contact them for questions, and they can pass messages on to me. I try to keep the messages down by keeping my email address off as much as possible. This way, it frees me up on the time to create content for the masses. I'm in Phoenix, Arizona. I got a nice lab here, but most of the days I got my headphones in and I'm got a head in my machine, camera on it, and I'm either testing, evaluating, experimenting, filming, or all of the above. So ideally, I mean, if you can reach out to your local guy and they can handle it, if not, they'll escalate it to me.
Absolutely. And I think it's one thing too that, again, I want to underscore, never underestimate what you can learn from just doing a simple laser demo at your local Trotec. Coming down, we have a lot of really, really great, talented staff who work at all of our different Trotecs, and would be very happy to take some of your files and take some of your materials and test them out on their machines, right there in the showroom to kind of see what it gives and find out, what it's capable of. I think that will pretty much do it for today. We're pretty much at the top of the hour, and we answered a ton of questions. Dave has got to prepare himself for Thanksgiving. It is coming soon.
Yeah, right. And it's nice in Arizona. It's a nice 70 degrees here. It's beautiful. I had to suffer through the long winter or the long summer in order to enjoy our nice winters down here in the desert. So I'm going to enjoy that.
Yeah, absolutely. You guys have beautiful weather down there. My
starting
parents
now.
Yes, my parents are in Phoenix, and they I can vouch for that winter. That Christmas weather is nice. It's beautiful.
Yeah, we pay for it though. Yeah, we pay for it.
Yes.
I think we hit 50 degrees C, 120 degrees Fahrenheit this summer, and I think we did 115 degrees plus for like 45, 50 days. It was crazy. It was a never ending. It was the hottest summer in recorded history. So we earned it.
Yes. Really, the secret, I think, if you can do it, is to just spend your summers at Trotec Canada and your winters in Trotec US.
We need to figure that out. I need a Laser Day facility in Trotec Canada's Ottawa office, or maybe Vancouver. It's beautiful there.
It is beautiful there. I'm sure we can figure something out. Some sort of
right. Yeah, I can have a remote office, keep lasers. I just bring my laptop, right?
Yeah. Yes, sir. And your MacBook. Also, I want to
I'll bring my MacBook.
Listen, a huge thank you again to everybody in the chat, to Corey in the background for helping us with all the videos, the questions, and everything else. We could not do this without you. Huge thank you to Dave, of course. I always gesture. I've literally made it almost the whole hour without gesturing the wrong direction, and then camera left at the end of I blew it.
I did it wrong,
Yeah, it's so hard, dude. We will see you guys again in a few weeks. I'm not sure when our video in December will be, or if we'll be able to do a live stream in December, because obviously with the holidays, things are going crazy. But I'm sure we'll try and do some small thing if we can. Otherwise, we will be back in January. I'm trying to organize some special guests for that as well. So I really look forward to seeing you guys again. Best wishes for Thanksgiving and the upcoming holiday season for everybody from Trotec. And, take care, everyone. We'll see you next time.
All right. Thank you, everyone.